The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and betrayal. I stared at the mahogany table, counting the rings from water stains while the words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Legacy Liability. 20 years. 2 decades of 14-hour days. Of missing birthdays and anniversaries. Of building this company's R&D division from 3 engineers in a converted storage closet to a 100-person powerhouse that generated 60% of their revenue. Legacy Liability. We need visionaries, Adrian Foster said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. The new CTO, 32 years old, MBA from Wharton, never built anything with his hands except PowerPoint presentations. I understand. My voice sounded foreign, calm, professional. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Victoria Blackwell, who'd hired me personally in 2004, wouldn't meet my eyes. Carlos Martinez, who'd called me a genius when I saved the Jensen project, studied his manicured nails. Your severance package is generous, Adrian continued, sliding a folder across the table. 6 months' salary, full benefits, non-compete waived. Non-compete waived. How magnanimous. We appreciate everything you've done, Victoria finally spoke. Her voice cracked slightly. But the market's changing. We need fresh perspectives. Fresh perspectives. From a kid who'd never shipped a product. I stood, picked up the folder. 20 years reduced to 30 pages of legal text. I'll clean out my office. Security will escort you, Adrian said. Standard procedure. Standard procedure. For a legacy liability. The walk to my office felt like a death march. Bruno from security trailed behind, probably hating every second. We'd shared countless late-night conversations over coffee and vending machine sandwiches. My office. 20 years of accumulated life. Awards on the walls. Photos with my team after successful launches. The prototype of our first breakthrough product, gathering dust on a shelf like a museum piece. Take your time, Bruno said quietly. I packed, mechanically. Personal items. Photos of Rachel and the kids. The stress ball my daughter made in art class. Everything else, the technical books, the industry publications, the whiteboards covered in equations, belonged to them now. My hands shook as I sealed the cardboard box. 20 years. Rachel found me in the garage at midnight, staring at the box I'd carried home like a funeral urn. How did it go? She asked, though my face had already answered. They called me a legacy liability. She sat beside me on the workbench where I used to fix the kids' bikes, her hand finding mine. 35 years of marriage, and she still knew when to speak and when to simply exist in the silence. I thought about the early days. Fresh out of MIT, hungry and naive, walking into Innovex Technologies' cramped offices in a converted warehouse. 3 of us in R&D then. Me, Linda Patterson, and old Frank Kowalski, who chain-smoked and kept a bottle of bourbon in his desk drawer. We're going to change the world, Frank had said on my first day, exhaling smoke rings. One impossible problem at a time. We did change the world piece by piece. The breakthrough in fiber optic processing that revolutionized telecommunications, the miniaturization protocols that made modern smartphones possible, 17 patents with my name on them, solutions that generated billions in revenue. But the world had a short memory. I remembered the nights. God, the nights. Rachel pregnant, with Lily, making dinner alone while I chased another deadline. Daniel's Little League games missed for product launches, family vacations postponed for crisis management. It'll be worth it, I'd tell myself. Tell Rachel. Tell the kids when they asked why Daddy worked so much. The promotions came: senior engineer, principal architect, director of R&D. Each title, another chain, another excuse to stay late, another reason why the company needed me more than my family did in that moment. Rachel never complained. Not when I missed our anniversary dinner for the Morrison Project crisis. Not when I took calls during Lily's graduation party. Not when the stress gave me ulcers and I spent 3 months on bland foods and antacids. She held us together while I held the company together. The kids turned out fine, she said now, reading my thoughts. They understand. Did they? Lily, now a doctor herself, working her own impossible hours. Daniel, teaching high school math, claiming he wanted work-life balance, but I saw the judgment in his eyes sometimes. The quiet question, was it worth it, Dad? 20 years of 16-hour days, of carrying home problems that kept me awake, staring at ceiling fans and calculating failure rates, of missing Christmas mornings for emergency product recalls. The garage smelled like sawdust and motor oil. Real smells, honest smells. Not like the sanitized conference room where they'd disposed of me like outdated equipment. "What will you do?" Rachel asked. I looked at my hands. 63 years old. Still steady. Still capable of building things. That mattered. "I don't know yet." But even as I said it, something was already stirring. A familiar sensation from the old days, when an impossible problem first revealed its hidden weak points. The coffee shop on Elm Street became my office. Corner table, back to the wall, laptop open to innocuous spreadsheets while I watched the real world function without me. 2 weeks into unemployment, I'd established routines. Morning run, shower, coffee shop by 9. The barista, a kid named Tyler with tribal tattoos and philosophy opinions, knew my order. Black coffee, no sugar. Fuel for thinking. I wasn't sulking. I was observing. The industry publications told interesting stories for those who knew how to read between the lines. Innovex's stock price had dipped 3% since my departure. Small enough to ignore, large enough to indicate uncertainty. Adrian Foster's first quarterly report emphasized aggressive innovation timelines and paradigm-shifting initiatives. Translation: he was panicking. The technical forums buzzed with rumors. Delayed product launches, quality control issues, engineers, jumping ship to competitors. Nothing definitive, nothing actionable. Yet. I'd maintained friendships across the industry. Casual relationships that seemed social but served deeper purposes. Blake Richardson at Zenith Technologies, Elena Santos at Progressive Dynamics. Old colleagues who'd scattered to various companies over the years, carrying pieces of institutional knowledge like seeds in the wind. Innocent conversations over lunch. "How's retirement treating you?" they'd ask. "Any consulting opportunities?" Mentioned being available for the right project. Nothing desperate, just available. Elena proved most interesting. Progressive Dynamics was Innovex's primary competitor, though they'd fallen behind in recent years. Their R&D pipeline had stagnated after their chief architect died suddenly 2 years ago. "We're struggling with next-gen fiber protocols," she admitted over wine at a downtown bistro. "The breakthrough is just out of reach." I nodded sympathetically. "Those problems are tricky. The solution usually involves rethinking fundamental assumptions." "Exactly. We keep hitting the same walls." Knew their walls. I'd hit them myself years ago before discovering the elegant workaround that became Innovex's crown jewel. Patent 8,847,293, the foundation of their current market dominance. But patents expired eventually. I did mental calculations while Elena talked about their quarterly pressures. Patent 8,847,293 had been filed in April 2015, 20-year term. Expiration date, April 2035, 11 years. Unless someone challenged the prior art claims. That night, I sat in my garage with boxes of old research notes. 20 years of accumulated knowledge, carefully organized and cross-referenced. The official story was that breakthrough patent came from collaborative team effort, multiple contributors, shared credit. The unofficial story was different. I found the notebook from March 2015. My handwriting, documenting the conceptual leap that solved everything. The prototype sketches, the initial test results, all predating the official team collaboration by 6 weeks. But I'd been a good soldier then. Shared credit, built consensus, let others add their names to the patent application for team morale. Good soldiers sometimes make poor strategists. I photographed every relevant page, organizing them chronologically, created encrypted backups, stored copies in 3 separate locations. Then I called Elena. "I've been thinking about your fiber protocol problem," I said. "Would you be interested in a consulting arrangement?" The Progressive Dynamics offices occupied 2 floors of a glass tower downtown. All open layouts and collaboration spaces that reminded me of Innovex before corporate success demanded mahogany and marble. Elena introduced me as a senior consulting engineer. Temporary assignment. Specific expertise in fiber optic processing protocols. The engineering team was younger than I expected, hungry, frustrated by problems they couldn't solve. They reminded me of myself 30 years ago, staring at impossible equations and refusing to accept defeat. "We've tried everything," explained Nathan Park, their lead engineer. He pulled up holographic displays showing failed prototype iterations. "The signal degradation curves keep hitting the same ceiling." I studied their work with professional interest. "Your fundamental approach is sound," I said carefully. "But you're fighting the physics instead of leveraging them." I sketched alternative configurations on their smart whiteboard, simple diagrams that hinted at deeper possibilities without revealing the actual breakthrough. Interesting, Nathan murmured. Can you elaborate? Let me run some calculations. I'll have something more concrete next week. That evening, I worked in my garage, translating decade-old insights into fresh implementations. The core innovation remained valid, but technology had evolved. New materials, improved manufacturing techniques, processing power that made previously impossible approaches suddenly feasible. I designed 3 prototype variants, each building toward the complete solution. Evolutionary steps that would seem like natural progress to outside observers. The first prototype required careful orchestration. I needed Progressive's engineers to feel ownership while I guided the process. Collaborative discovery rather than external imposition. What if we inverted the signal pathway here? I suggested during Tuesday's engineering review, pointing to a specific junction in Nathan's latest design. That might work, Nathan said slowly. But the resonance equations would need complete recalibration. True, complex calculations, but potentially game-changing if we solve them. I volunteered to tackle the math over the weekend, 40 hours of apparent research that drew on work I'd completed years earlier. Monday morning brought breakthrough. These calculations are incredible, Nathan said, staring at my results. How did you? Experience helps, I said modestly, plus some unconventional thinking. The prototype worked perfectly. Signal clarity improved by 40% over their previous best. The team celebrated like they'd won the World Series. Meanwhile, across town, Innovex was struggling. My former colleagues reached out regularly. Innocent conversations over coffee. How's the new gig? They'd ask. Adrian keeping everyone busy? We're busy, all right. Busy fixing problems that should never have existed. The Morrison 3.0 launch had been pushed back twice. Quality assurance was catching issues that should have been resolved in design phase. Adrian had hired 6 new engineers to replace institutional knowledge that walked out with me. It's rough, admitted Linda Patterson, my former deputy director, over Thursday lunch. We're working twice as hard and getting half the results. Growing pains, I said sympathetically. New leadership takes time to find its rhythm. Adrian keeps talking about revolutionary breakthroughs, paradigm shifts, but nobody knows what he actually wants. Clear communication is essential in R&D. Exactly. Remember how you used to draw those simple diagrams that made everything click? Adrian just shows us PowerPoints with buzzwords. I made appropriate noises of sympathy while internally cataloging every piece of intelligence. By month's end, Progressive's first prototype had evolved into something remarkable, not just matching Innovex's current capabilities, but exceeding them. Nathan's team was euphoric. Elena was already talking to manufacturing about production timelines, and I was just getting started. The second prototype would require more delicate maneuvering. I needed to access deeper technical knowledge while maintaining plausible deniability. The solution required understanding Innovex's specific implementation details. Information I possessed but couldn't reveal directly. Industrial espionage was a serious crime, but corporate consulting was perfectly legal, even when the consultant happened to know exactly which technical approaches would work and which would fail, and why. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Victoria Blackwell's name on my phone screen, probably waking Rachel. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Now. Good morning to you too, Victoria. Cut the shit, William. Progressive Dynamics just filed 17 patent applications. That looks suspiciously like our proprietary research. I sipped my coffee slowly. That's concerning. Industrial espionage is a serious matter. Don't. Just don't. Her voice cracked slightly. I know it's you. I'm flattered, but I think you overestimate my influence. I'm just a legacy liability, remember? Silence stretched between us. 20 years of history condensed into accusation and denial. The board is an emergency session, she finally said. Adrian is talking about lawsuits, injunctions. He wants to destroy you. Adrian should focus on his paradigm-shifting initiatives. This isn't a game, William. No, I agreed. It's not. I hung up and returned to my morning routine. Shower, breakfast, coffee shop by 9. Tyler the barista had my order ready before I reached the counter. The Progressive Dynamics offices hummed with controlled excitement. Nathan's team had completed Prototype 3 over the weekend. Manufacturing was already tooling production lines. Marketing had scheduled the press announcement for next Monday. Incredible work, I told Nathan privately. You've built something revolutionary. Couldn't have done it without your insights, he said. The resonance calculations especially, pure genius. Collaborative effort. The best breakthroughs always are. My phone buzzed constantly. Calls from former colleagues, reporters asking for comments, lawyers representing various interests. I answered none of them. Instead, I walked across, downtown to the Innovex building. 20 years of my life contained within 47 floors of steel and glass. I stood on the sidewalk watching people hurry past with briefcases and coffee cups, all of them focused on problems that suddenly seemed very small. Through the lobby windows I could see unusual activity. Security guards checking IDs twice. Executives huddled in urgent conversations. Crisis management in real time. Adrian Foster emerged from the elevator bank, surrounded by lawyers and looking like a man who'd discovered his house was built on quicksand. Our eyes met through the glass. He recognized me immediately. Fury and fear warred on his face. I nodded politely and walked away. The industry publications worked overtime that week. Innovex faces patent challenge. Progressive dynamics claims. Prior art violations. Market leadership suddenly uncertain. Stock prices told the real story. Innovex down 18% in 3 days. Progressive up 12%. Billions of dollars in market capitalization, shifting between companies like water finding its level. Friday brought the coup de grace. I'd spent months carefully documenting the timeline of patent 847-293. Every meeting, every email, every notebook. Entry. The evidence painted a clear picture. The core innovation had been developed independently, with insufficient collaboration to justify shared credit. More importantly, my original research predated the official patent filing by 6 weeks. Prior art that called the entire foundation into question. The legal brief filed with the Patent Office ran 847 pages. Meticulous documentation. Irrefutable evidence. Perfect execution. Victoria called again that evening. You know this will destroy the company, she said. The company will adapt, it always has. People will lose their jobs. People lose jobs all the time, I should know. This isn't justice, William. It's revenge. I watched Rachel tend her garden through the kitchen window. 35 years of marriage, and she still found peace in making things grow. Justice and revenge aren't mutually exclusive, I said. Adrian Foster resigned Monday morning. To pursue other opportunities, according to the press release. The board scheduled an emergency shareholders meeting. Stock analysts revised their recommendations. Competitors circled like vultures. 20 years of institutional knowledge doesn't disappear overnight. But it can be neutralized, dispersed, redirected toward more deserving purposes. I submitted my final consulting report to Progressive Dynamics on Wednesday. Comprehensive technical documentation, implementation guidelines, manufacturing specifications. Everything they needed to dominate the market for the next decade. Nathan Park sent a handwritten thank you note. You changed everything, he wrote. How can we ever repay you? Some gifts don't require repayment. The settlement negotiations took place in a conference room identical to the one where they'd fired me. Same mahogany table, same burnt coffee smell, different faces mostly. Victoria looked older, grayer. The stress of watching a company implode showed in the lines around her eyes. We're prepared to offer full reinstatement, she said quietly. Chief Technology Officer, full benefits, stock options. With Adrian gone, we need experienced leadership, added Carlos Martinez. Someone who understands our technical foundation. Leaned back in my chair, studying their faces. Fear and desperation masked as opportunity. That's generous, I said. But I'm enjoying retirement. The patent challenges, Victoria continued. Perhaps we could reach some accommodation, licensing agreements, shared royalties. The patent office will make their determination based on evidence. I can't influence that process. Of course not. But as a gesture of goodwill, I appreciate the offer. But I'm not interested in returning to Innovex. Silence stretched uncomfortably. 20 years of history dying in a conference room that smelled like defeat. Outside, autumn had arrived early. Rachel and I walked downtown, past the coffee shop, where I'd planned their destruction one careful step at a time. Tyler waved through the window, probably wondering why his regular customer had disappeared. Do you feel better? I considered the question seriously. Did I feel better? Justice had been served. Competence had been rewarded. The market had corrected a temporary inefficiency. "I feel satisfied," I said finally. Progressive Dynamics' stock price had stabilized, at 40% above pre-announcement levels. Nathan Park had been promoted to chief architect. Elena Santos was fielding calls from Fortune 500 companies eager to license their breakthrough technology. Meanwhile, Innovex continued its managed decline. Asset sales, layoffs, merger discussions with larger competitors. The inevitable fate of companies that mistake slogans for strategy. Some former colleagues landed well. Linda Patterson joined a startup focused on quantum computing. Blake Richardson started his own consulting firm. Others weren't so fortunate. I felt no guilt about their struggles. I'd spent 20 years building something valuable only to be discarded when convenience demanded it. They'd made their choices, lived with the consequences, as would I. The garage had been converted back to its original purpose. Rachel's car occupied the space where I'd once plotted corporate revenge. My workbench held projects that mattered to me now: birdhouses for the grandkids, repairs for neighbors who couldn't afford professional help. Real things, honest things. The industry publications still called occasionally. Comments on the Innovex situation, reporters would ask. Insights on market disruption? I declined all interviews. Let others explain the forces that had reshaped their comfortable world. I had gardens to tend and grandchildren to visit, and a wife who deserved attention. I'd too long denied her, but sometimes late at night I'd sit in my study reviewing the timeline of events. 6 months from termination to triumph, from legacy liability to market destroyer. The notebook where I'd first sketched the resonance equations sat in my desk drawer, its pages yellow with age. Evidence of work that had changed everything twice. Some legacies endure longer than the people who try to bury them. I closed the notebook and turned off the light. Tomorrow would bring new problems, new opportunities, new challenges worth solving. But tonight, Rachel was reading in bed. And that was, legacy enough for anyone.